The challenge facing us was how to reform the system without cutting the support that people receive.
Can I ask the Prime Minister, when is she going to scrap Universal Credit?
There's 200,000 more people in work as a result of introducing Universal Credit.
As a committee, we've received evidence that women are turning to prostitution whilst waiting for Universal Credit.
Universal Credit.
Universal Credit.
Universal Credit.
Universal Credit.
Universal Credit. Universal Credit. Universal Credit.
And you see us there as a safety net.
Universal Credit represents the biggest change to the welfare system since its creation. By speaking to experts, this film explores the detrimental effects of this new system upon its claimants. So what exactly is this new benefit? Universal Credit replaces 6 existing means-tested legacy benefits: income support, income-based job seekers allowance, income-related employment and support allowance, housing benefit, child tax credit, and working tax credit. The entire figure of Universal Credit is paid on a monthly basis. And once you claim Universal Credit, all other legacy benefits stop, and it can take up to 6 weeks for the initial payment of Universal Credit, which can be devastating for some claimants. The main claim of Universal Credit is to make work pay. Unlike some legacy systems, Universal Credit allows claimants to take on part-time work without losing their benefit entitlements altogether, and reduces payments as claimants earn more. By October 2018, more than 1 million households were receiving Universal Credit. It was originally planned for the system to have been fully rolled out by 2017 to 2018. But currently, the full rollout is expected to be complete by 2022 to 2023.
Universal Credit is an incredibly complex process for claimants in general. That's from the application process right down to just the day-to-day being on the benefit.
The entire process of claiming Universal Credit is carried out online, causing massive problems for those who are not technologically literate or for those who don't have internet access.
So the conditionality is laid out in a document that's called a claimant commitment, and this is a so-called agreed with a work coach at the job centre. This comes at the very beginning of the claim.
Now, the claimant commitment will usually say things like 35 hours of job seeking per week. So you are literally meant to be either sitting in front of a computer, attending interviews, researching job opportunities 35 hours per week.
So you have to accept your work-related requirements as set out in your claimant commitment, or you don't receive your benefits.
Now, because a person on Universal Credit signs a commitment to find work for full-time work, they could actually be sanctioned for not finding extra hours to fulfil that full-time commitment.
I know people who've got 2 jobs and they're still not able to get up to the 48 hour.
A lot of the work that people are then forced to do or end up doing is what David Graeber calls a bullshit job, i.e. a very low productivity job.
As we know, work-related requirements can actually mean unpaid work, internships, work experience for no money.
The amount of money that you get from Universal Credit is not possible to live on.
Universal Credit's message is that you need more incentives to work, and we're going to improve those incentives so you can get a little bit less poor by working harder. And the fundamental flaw with this is that people were already working really hard.
Another massive change introduced by Universal Credit is the huge increase in sanctioning. In comparison to the legacy benefit system, sanctions are 9 times higher under Universal Credit.
And if at any point you breach these conditions, your work coach is legally allowed to sanction you for up to a year. This forces you into food banks, this forces you into absolute poverty.
We're hearing anecdotal stories that those who are using food banks aren't just sort of families who are, out of work. They're actually sort of professionals that are accessing these resources.
There's a linkage between sanctions and food banks, and there has been from about 2011-12 that was started to be noticed. Essentially, if you don't have any money and you need to find food from somewhere, and that is a food bank. One of the things that Government is quite keen to say that it does not insist anyone goes to a food bank. However, the form for this hardship payment, which you can get to give you some support during your sanction period, that form has a box to tick that says, I have considered looking for charity.
I mean, when it comes to school holidays, now we have something called holiday hunger, which is ridiculous because parents can't, they rely on their free school meals to feed their own children. So then in the summer, you see queues outside schools for holiday clubs set up just so the kids can have one meal a day.
Michael Gove has actually said if people end up on universal credit and having to go to food banks, it's their own fault. I mean, this is on record.
Diseases like rickets are coming back because people are going without the vitamins and nutrients. I mean, it's 2019, not 1719.
It does create this illusion that some people are just simply unworthy, incapable, the scroungers, the skivers. These are all lies. There's no data to support this. But it's very persuasive if you're rich and powerful. But sadly, and this is the really worrying thing, it's quite persuasive if you're not rich and powerful, but you just think that maybe somebody's getting a better deal than you. So really the kind of political rhetoric is all about encouraging people to believe that they are doing a good job, you know, that they're the hard-working family, and that anybody slightly poorer than them, it's their fault. And that character flaw issue.
We come to a set of policies which say we must force people to work by threatening them with punishment. We must reduce the amount of benefit they get so that their life is really unpleasant to encourage them to move forward. And even this idea of forced work, that we will tell you what to do, and if you do not do it, we will punish you. It's the same false narrative leading to the same fundamental conclusion. And what we've seen sort of 9 years into that experiment is that lots of families are absolutely struggling, and we see hunger, and we see sort of a lack of dignity, and a dignity being stripped away, and people being locked down in a way that we haven't seen in 20, 30 years.
I think this is moral regulation. It's about scaring people into obedience.
An attitude and a culture was pervaded into the sort of machine of the Department of Work and Pensions, and we can read all sorts of memos that were passed down, and we can read sort of disciplinary, and the PCS union who represent job centre workers document this very well, about how pressure was implied increasingly on people to choose to sanction those in front of them.
In 2017, more than 70,000 low-income families lost up to £2,800 after having their entitlement to benefits taken away as a result of the two-child policy.
The two-child limit means that parents can only claim benefit for the first 2 children that they have, and any children that they have thereafter they can't access benefits for.
We know it's going to increase poverty. We know it's one of the biggest child poverty increasing measures inside universal credit. It doesn't change birth rate because people don't have children because of benefits.
However, an exception to the two-child limit is what is known as the rape clause.
The rape clause is if somebody has more than 2 children and they wish to claim benefits for a third or any subsequent children who were conceived through rape, then they have to disclose that rape to a job coach, who will then make that decision as to whether or not the benefit will be paid or not.
The fact that we have laws in the UK or benefits that you can only access by going and speaking to someone in the department and saying that I've been raped, I think is absolutely abhorrent.
Stop universal credit! No! Stop universal credit! No! Stop universal credit! No! Stop
Universal credit is an absolute travesty. It's devastating for disabled people.
So the effect universal credit has had on my physical and my mental health has been quite profound. When I was put onto it in 2017, my mental health was quite stable. My physical health, I'm in a wheelchair, but it was good. You know, it wasn't, I was plodding along, I could function. And within 6 months, I'd lost 25% of my body weight. My hair had begun to fall out, my teeth had become loose, and I attempted to take my own life in March 2018. Twice, after telling this in my online journal. And still they says, no, there's nothing wrong with your mental health, because in their health assessment they said, I can make eye contact, so I have no mental health problems. And I was assessed by an occupational therapist. And I am someone with complex neurological and mental health problems. And an occupational therapist has had, a 30-minute PowerPoint presentation.
The work capability assessment looks at a claimant's physical and mental health, and they will either be classified as capable of work or with a limited capability for work. Those claimants deemed fit for work will no longer receive employment and support allowance.
So the work capability assessment for Universal Credit is quite a lot different than the legacy one. For a start, the legacy one, they would take into account on the application for them to assess your health, the views of your doctor. Whereas now, the onus is on you to get all that documentation from all your different doctors and send that to them.
These assessments, you go through a set of questions and they then decide, can you pick a coin up? Can you pick a pen up? Can you pick a box up? Can you pick a pint of milk up?
There's people with terminal cancer having to have health assessments because they didn't know that the onus is on them to get those health assessments.
This government outsourcing of individuals who are trained as disability analysts to see if somebody is able to work change the goalposts considerably for disabled people.
The British Medical Association has advised doctors not to do it because they may be breaking their Hippocratic oath by causing harm. So this has led to things like physiotherapists, paramedics, occupational therapists and nurses carrying out the assessments, which, like, a nurse carrying out an assessment on someone with a broken leg is one thing, but for someone with a neurological disorder, a physiotherapist would have no idea. But the DWP's come back on this as it's not a health assessment, it's a needs assessment. Whereas if they don't understand the condition, they can't understand the person's needs. Like, my assessor was an occupational therapist who had never even heard of my condition.
There seems to be this total disregard of any GP medical evidence to support that person's claim about their disability. They just sweep it aside, and it's like, well, if you can pick a box up or pick a pint of milk up, you're fit for work. Or if you can touch the top of your head, you're fit for work because you can raise your arm. I mean, it's absolutely ludicrous because it's setting people up to fail.
It was probably a few years ago that I came across a suicide note that was reproduced online, publicly available, I think by the BBC. And I was really struck by the note because it showed a really clear link between welfare reform, austerity and suicide for this particular person. And then I came across, in doing this, both Callum's List and the Black Triangle campaign, who both on their websites maintain lists of deaths more widely, including suicides, that have been linked to welfare reform or to austerity.
And I do also believe that this entrepreneurial ideal, which we're all forced into under neoliberalism, and particularly right-wing neoliberalism, creates the concept if you're not creating wealth, you're useless. What's the point of you? This is your really only requirement to be a citizen, isn't it? To create wealth, be totally responsible for everything and be self-sufficient. And if you do not do that, you are absolutely worthless to society.
Social rights were a part of citizenship, and it's based on your entitlement. You have that access to those provisions to meet basic needs based on the fact that you are a citizen, based on that citizenship status. But under conditionality, and including the conditionality in Universal Credit, your access to these financial resources to meet basic needs is now based on your behaviour, or even not even your actual behaviour, how you're perceived to be behaving by your work coach. And therefore it undermines your rights because you don't get them anymore based on your entitlements. or need, they can be taken away from you.
So in a sense, what we've done is we've become little economic units in their imagined society of people running around, functioning and being valued by the market. That's simply not how a decent society should imagine itself. It's a complete turning upside down of basic human values, moral values, ethical principles, and democratic values.
The Tories' flagship policy, Universal Credit, has caused an explosion in people going to food banks, pushed children into poverty, and even resulted in people dying at the hands of this cruel system. In government, Labour will scrap Universal Credit. We'll end the inhumane sanctions regime. We'll do away with the ridiculous 5-week wait for payments. And never again will any woman have to fill in a form to prove her child was born as a result of rape.